Custom inputs to reverse is here in UEFN, and in this tutorial I'm going to give you the full rundown on how to use it, utilize it through verse, and make your own custom inputs so you can do cool things like making an ability where you do a dash or you grant some gold or something like that. There's also more functionality over like an input trigger so you can detect how long someone's holding a button for, something like that. It's pretty cool. So let's just get to it. Now first things first, we want to go to our content drawer. Now inside of here, you're going to find, if you search up inputs, you're going to find all these new things inside of here, these new cool things. Now these are epic made assets, cannot modify, so if you try to click onto them, it's not going to work. I kind of spread a bit of misinformation in my last video. I stumbled upon a feature that it was actually unreleased, which is basically going inside the mappings and adding all your own keys and everything. This you cannot do, okay? I want to stress that enough. This is not what this is. Basically what this is more an input trigger, but you have more finite control over it, if that makes sense. So you can't change the bindings or anything, you can't change the, or really the mapping contexts, but you can change what happens when the inputs are triggered. So effectively, it's kind of just like a buffed input trigger, but in verse, and you can have a lot more control over it. It's actually very useful still. But basically, these input maps will allow us to detect different inputs when the player hits a button if you're on the controller or the keyboard. We have a bunch of inputs in here like crouch, jump, reload, sprint, weapon primary, weapon secondary, and we also have input maps for the ranged weapon and reversal. Now reversal controls crouch, jump, and sprint, and then the ranged weapon controls reload, weapon primary, and weapon secondary. Though it's quite a limited selection right now, but in the future Epic will be adding a lot more of these. I also believe these are experimental, so I don't think you can publish with this yet, so also keep that in mind. But nevertheless, it is a really cool feature. So to actually use these and actually make our input maps work and how to detect them, we have to go into Verse. So next thing, you want to go into our Verse Explorer here and do Verse Explorer, and you have it there. Next step is you want to go into our content, right click it, and we're going to create a new Verse file. Inside of here then, we're going to get a Verse device, and we're going to call this maybe like input mapping device, doesn't really matter. And then we'll do create. Once that's made, we need to open up VS Code. So right click it here or the verse here. That's going to open up VS Code. If you don't have VS Code installed, go into the Microsoft Store and download it. Anyways, here we are inside of Verse. I'm just going to clean this up a little bit, like I normally do. I'm going to get rid of all the comments. And there we go here. Perfect. There's a few modules up top we need to import that will let us use all these inputs. So we want to do using brackets. And inside of here, we're going to do /fortnite.com/inputs. That'll allow us to get the inputs. Then we're going to do again another one, which is Fortnite.com character. There we go. Next we need unrealengine.com/control inputs. Then finally we're going to need for using /verse.org/asset this. Or is that right? No, I did /org.org. There we go. Perfect. All right, next thing is that we want to make it editable for our mapping. So like I said earlier, there's mappings and there's inputs. And the mapping is contained a bunch of inputs that we can use, and we need to utilize the mappings to get to the inputs. I don't think you need to do this, but if you want, you can add in your own mapping. Like, I don't think this does anything, but we're just going to do editable my mapping and !input_mapping equals false. This is an optional input mapping. So basically, this is like a box that stores an input map. We can look inside of it and we can find an input map if it isn't there or not. Right now, it's equal to false, which means it's empty, so there's nothing inside of it. If I build my verse code, as this is an editable, I can just go down here, my input mapping, and I'm just going to drag out our input map device. Ignore the other one. And there we go. Here it is in here. If you go to details, you're going to now see we have our my mapping editable in here, and we can set it to a value. If I click into this, we can do assets input mapping, and then it's going to expand like this. And instead of here, then we can add in our input map. Now for this video, I'm going to use traversal because I'm going to be mainly using the jump button. If you want to use like the right click, left click, L2, R1, or square button, like the reload button, you want to use a ranged weapon if you want to use those. If you want to use traversal, that gives you crouch, jump, and I believe, what's the other one? Sprints? I think it's sprint, right? So we'll do traversal. We'll see it again. Yeah, it's sprint. So you can do it like that. Now I do believe that inside the API, you can actually just import this straight up thing. So this is more like future proofing. I don't think you need to do this, but you can add in your own mappings maybe in the future. So, but generally speaking, you can just get the traversal maps and range weapon maps straight up in the API by just or whatever. So you can just do it like that. So next thing we need to get the input maps and the events from each player. So to do that, we're going to do for, and this needs to be an again. And what we want to do is we're going to do it for a player, which is going to be our player element. Set this generator. We're going to get play space brackets dot get players, and this is going to get all the players in our lobby, and it's going to put them in a for. Next step is that we're going to do player input. This is the player input for each player, so we're going to put this to get player input, and it's going to be 8 like so. Let's get our player. Ignore all the errors for now. It's fine. I'm just going to do I'm going to do enter, and inside of here now, since we've gotten the player, we've gotten them out of the play space. We then got the player input using the get player input function of the player. Now since we have the player input, we can now get input event. So what we're going to do is jump event is equal to player input dot get input event events. Okay. So we basically made jump event equal to the jump event. Now, if you want to see all the different events and all you can do, you can hold control and you just want to hover over jump, and it'll bring you to this area, which is going to show you all the different things you can use. Now, inside of here, like before, this is inside the input module, inside the character module, and inside of here, you have obviously you have the range weapon mapping, which is going to be our input mapping, and inside of that we have reload, weapon primary, and weapon secondary. Then we also have traversal mapping, which is also another map, and we have inside that crouch, sprint, and jump. Now, these three right here, and also those three up there, these are input action. They're different to input mappings, or the things you put inside, like the little assets, like blue assets we saw earlier. Now, each of these have a set amount of functions we can use. So to actually find the events we can actually use, we can hold control and we can do get input events. Inside of here, then we want to scroll up, and now you can see them here, which is our input event. And we have activation triggered events, we have activation cancelled events, we have detection begin event, detection ongoing event, and detection end event. Basically, generally speaking, you're going to be just using this one, but if you want, you can do this if you ever want to cancel an event. And this one is very good for holding buttons. So if you want a button that you can hold, and after a amount of time you have to hold it, you can use this very well. If you want it to end when you're holding, this one's also good. This one's more for like, does it detect actually holdered it? It can just keep on going forever. Anyways, in each of these, there's a tuple, which contains a player and a type, which I believe is logic. You'll see it here, is the value generated by put, so it's going to be a logic that's true or false. And each of these have their own. So this one has a player, a t, and a float, and I believe that float is the elapsed seconds since the text again, and so on and so forth. They'll have other different things. Just check in here what you can actually do to actually subscribe them to our jump event. What we're going to do is go to jump event. We're gonna get activation triggered event, like the one we just saw, and we're going to subscribe that to a function just like any other event. So this could be like a something called on trigger jump. So that's a function called on trigger jump. Now we can make a bunch of other ones. Here's just a list of all of them. You have activation cancelled, detection begin, detection ongoing, and detection end. And you can subscribe it to a bunch of different functions we want. Now, let's say if you wanted to get another control, it's pretty easy. And like I said earlier, inside of here you can find them all. So you can have crouch and sprint, and it's pretty simple. All you gotta do is you just gotta do it exact same, which is crouch event. We'll do player input, get input events, and we're gonna get crouch and it's that simple. That's all we have to do. And we can do the exact same thing now with the jump events and just subscribe out to different functions when different things happen. And I do believe that all these 5 are exactly the same for every single input. So crouch, jump, sprint, shoot, reload, they all have these. So we're going to be able to use them single one. They're all an input action, I do believe, or input events. So next step, what we want to do is we're going to make our function, okay? So let's say if we want on trigger jump to actually do something, we're going to go over here and we're going to actually make on trigger jump. We're going to need our parameters. So again, if you saw inside of here, the tuples, we're going to need a player and a t, which is a logic. So this is going to be our player type player. This is the player we're going to add in, and we can also do like a logic. The state of the jump is equal to logic like this. Then what we do is the thing is void equals, which is the return type. We'll do void again. By the way, if you don't know anything about verse or anything like that, watch my tutorials on it. I have a whole like series about it. Anyways, next step is now, since we have this, we can do whatever we want inside of on trigger jump. So for example, we could do print, and just as a thing, we could check on trigger, and inside here we can check if it's like what's state, so state like that. Now I think this is gonna not work because it's an overload of the function string. So this allows us to convert like numbers and stuff into strings, but it's not working. So what we can do is I don't think logic's supported. So we're gonna convert logic into a string and there again. So what we do is we'll make a new string. This is gonna be our state string of type string to this. Then we'll make an if state equal true. Then inside of here we'll do set state string, which is gonna be our string to true. Which is like that. We can also do else. Did I spell that wrong? State string. Oh, sorry, this needs to be a var. Yeah, right. There we go. Sorry, I'm in a variable. There we go. And set state string equal to like so. And then in here we do state string instead of state, and then that will work. Basically, that's how we would make something like this work for on trigger jump. And I remember this plays when the jump is triggered. And generally speaking, whatever the hell you want to do, like item granter, grant, whatever, or something like a device that does something, you could put it inside of there, and that's how you do it. And here's an example for on cancelled. It's slightly different. It's basically the same thing, but we have a new thing which is in time, which is a float, and you gotta make sure you have that float there. And then we can use that float down here in on cancel jump to show what time it is, or how long it's been, or when it got cancelled. So yeah, here's another example for on detection begin jump in player state logic. Again, here's an example for on detection begin jump. We have an in player and an in state, so we're going to do it like that. We have an on detection ongoing, so this is more for like if the button is currently being pressed and it's ongoing, so we can detect the in player player, the in state. We also detect the in time, which is very helpful because it allows us to track different things. And we can also do on detection end jump. And basically what this is it will show us when the jump is finished, or like how long after the first like detection is when it ends. So we can detect that. Now this looks slightly different because we don't have the string or the end state. I hope this helps you understand like all the different functions you can use for every single input and what they actually do, how to actually get them, what they give you, and what you can do with them and stuff. Now there's another important thing, which is going to be adding input mapping and removing input. Now just keep in mind, if you remove input maps, you're going to be removing buttons from players, so you might have to add back in input maps. There might be a better way to like turn this off and on if you don't want it like on at certain points. I'll show you that later, but if you want to actually add input mapping and get rid of input map, what we're going to do is we're just going to add in 2 more editables. We're going to add in an add trigger, and we're just going to use a trigger device for this, and we're going to have a trigger that will allow us to that's going to add the map, and this one's and then it's going to the map. Do trigger device. There we go. I don't know why I said editables. There we go. And then we'll do remove like that. Pretty simple. Then we have 2 besides. Then we have 2 of those. If we scroll under here, we want to actually like use them. So what we can do is down here we want to subscribe 2 functions. So add trigger. We do a triggered event subscribe, and we'll do add, something like that. That'll work. Again, that's a function that we haven't made, so that's getting an error. But again, triggered event inside a trigger is just the triggers devices function, which is like or an event that is triggered. Now keep in mind, the triggered event is it takes in an optional agent. So again, a trigger can be triggered by maybe something else than a player, so it needs to be an optional. Now because of this, we're going to do a little more steps later on with options to get the player out of the thing, which is I'll show you in a sec. And also we want remove triggered event scribe, and we'll do input map like so. Perfect. Now we actually make our function, which is going to add and remove input mapping. So we're going to add input mapping, and since this is a trigger, we're going to use a maybe agent. Now if you didn't use a trigger and you use something else like a mutator zone or anything else, just check inside the thing if question mark or not. Usually with a trigger it is, so you want to do question mark agent like that. So type of an option, do void equals. Then inside of here, we're going to do if, and down here do agent is equal to maybe agent. So we can get an agent outside of our optional. We're just going to like, is our agents is our maybe agent could possibly be inside the box maybe. Then we need to get the player from this, so we do player is equal to player agent. This allows us to get the player out of the agent. We need the player because we need the player input, so we do player input is equal to get player input, and then we'll do player like so. Then what we can do is we can either put in our custom mapping here. So for example, we can put in our mapping we made up here, which is my mapping, or you can do a set map. So if I do something like mapping is equal to my mapping, just like the agent before, since it's optional, we get to grab it out. So there we go. Oh my god, what just happened? And there we go. We can do then, and then inside of here we can do player input, and then we're gonna use a function called add input mapping. Of course, then we need our mapping. So inside of here you have an option of using mapping, or you can also do something like traversal, which is an inbuilt function again inside of our API for map. Again, you can also use the range up map as well. Now again, you don't have to make it editable. I don't think you can just straight up put this inside of here and it'll work fine. That's basically how you do it. Then let's say if you wanted to remove the input map. Now moving input mapping is kind of weird because it removes the input map from the player, so they won't have buttons to press. But if you want to do this, this is how you do it. Pretty much the same thing. So we're getting the agent again. We'll do if agent db. Now we'll do player with the player agent. We're getting the agent out of the player class. We'll do player input is equal to get player input. Oh my god, bro. Because the suffix players input. Oh my god. Now we'll do mapping again equal to my map. Then finally, last thing we need is just player input remove put map. So this is a function you use to remove the input. So it's like the same as before, and the mapping we're gonna actually I just realized, is that wrong? Oh, there we go. And also void. There you go. So now this allows us to add and remove input maps whatever we want. Of course, I'm adding and removing the reversal map here, so I do. So if I just save and compile this, so I'm just gonna save this, and then I'm gonna drag out 2 triggers. Maybe our triggers like 1, 2, and then our thing where we do add trigger will be this one, and then be that one. Do them like maybe over here. That works. So we'll go into the game and we're gonna actually see if this works or not, and we'll just see how this goes. If I jump, nothing's happening. You can't see the code at the top left. But if I walk into this add trigger, if I press it now, you're gonna see all the different stuff happen. You can see if I'm jumping or not, how long the input takes, detection trigger, these kind of ends, all the stuff that we added. You can also see if I hold the button. I'm gonna notice that if I hold it, you can see that you can actually track how long the player's holding the button for, and you can use that to maybe do some cool thing. There's a ton of cool stuff we can do with this. And if I go into this other trigger, and if I were to like walk onto it, I'm gonna see now that my mapping is now gone. Okay, and if you look, I know I literally cannot jump. I cannot the one. I don't think I can. I cannot jump. I don't think I can crouch. Yeah, I can't crouch, and there's a few other things I can't do. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. But sometimes you may not want to actually remove the controls. You maybe just want to change what the controls do. Makes sense. Now before we do that, I'm gonna get onto UI, and I'm gonna try and make some cool UI that we can actually show the different buttons that are on our screen. Now to do this, what we can do is go and contour. We'll go down to right click here, and then we'll do user interface widget blueprint. Add that. We're gonna make it a user widget because we're gonna be using a HUD message device. I already placed it down there if you noticed. And we're going to add in a custom HUD, which is like, I'm just gonna input my HUD. There we go. And we're gonna go inside of it. Now once we're inside, I'm just gonna drag in a canvas panel, and then I'm gonna drag in an overlay, and then inside this overlay I'm gonna put a grid panel, and also so let's just organize our stuff. I'm gonna put this overlay in the middle of the screen, and maybe I'll drag this anchor to the middle as well, so I anchor correctly. Then inside this grid panel, what we're gonna do is we want to get our action widgets, which is a new widget which we can use to get like inputs, and we can like see what the buttons are for our inputs and show the player UI. We'll just add them in. There's an action there in the center. I'm gonna try and center it there like that. And then if you don't know how to center, you want to do the horizontal alignment and the vertical alignment, but the overlay, that's how you do it. And we'll have an action widget, and I'm just going to control V, and now we have 6 of them. Now this one I'm gonna move to the side. So this one I'm gonna make column 1, it'll be column 2, this one will be column 3, column 4, and column 5. That. Oh, then I'm gonna click on all of these. I'm gonna hold shift and click on it. And we'll do padding, and we'll do a little bit of padding, 50, maybe 40. There we go. And now we have a little UI. And now to actually update these with all our button context, what we can do is we click on our action widget, and then over here in common action widget, we can put an enhanced input actions here, and we can connect it to it. So for example, we'll connect crouch, and we'll do the same for every other one, and these will all update to the right context. Now keep in mind, if there isn't a context or you've removed the mapping through verse, the things will disappear and you won't be able to see them. So don't mind. But usually speaking, if you have a thing on player, or player has a mapping, these should work, and you'll be able to see them on the HUD. We just want to add in a view model. So we do go into view entities on here and add a view model, and we're going to add in a HUD message device because it's they're using, so it's message here, and we'll add that there, and that'll give us all these new. Also, if you want to, you can make these bigger on the screen, like using scale on here, but just keep in mind the resolution of them are quite small and they look kind of blurry if you make them bigger. But anyways, we'll just compile it. That should be fine. And we're going back into input mapping, our level. We're just going to go back to our level, and we're going to right click on our HUD message device, and inside of those settings, we're going to do settings like this, where we're going to go down to here and make sure show for duration is going to be like this. Just turn it off. Our HUD widget is going to be our input mapping HUD, and then the rest you can change. You can change the animations if you want. I might them off. Also, our placement is important because remember, it's our anchor. If you look at our overlay, our anchor is in the middle of the screen, so you want it to be the same. So we want our thing to appear and the custom on the center, like so. So that will work. It should look right. And then for our functions, we're going to show on trigger, which is this one, like that, and then we're going to hide it on there. It should be pretty straightforward, pretty fine. So we have our trigger enabled, and we have our verse code detecting everything. This UI will be shown, and then when we walk on this trigger, which it will be hidden. So now if I go into this game again, if I walk on this trigger, we're going to see the UI now, and you're going to see it works all the different options added: crouch, jump. You can detect all the jumping stuff again, like usual. And again, you can detect all these inputs, all the same like buttons that are pretty fun. Again, if I were to walk on this trigger, you're gonna notice like for a split second, like a few of them disappear. It's because I'm hiding the UI when I walk onto it, but didn't hide that UI, you're gonna notice that the versal ones will disappear, but the range weapon ones wouldn't. So I think next thing I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna add functionality to this. Like I'm gonna add in a way where you can, like, if you hold a button, you can get a dash to build to go like pew, and do a dash. Well, maybe you can do that. And maybe we can make it so you can also swap between different things you can do. So maybe you have like a thing that has like if it's not turned on, you'll have like you get gold to jump. If it is turned on, you get dashing. I also might turn off the remove input mapping and I'm gonna replace that with like a way to just disable it. So yeah, so let's just get to it. I think first thing I'm gonna add is the enabling and disabling the entire thing, so you can swap between two states. So I'm just gonna add in a variable called isEnable. This basically will let us enable or disable the entire thing. To make this actually work, what I'm gonna do is that inside of every single one of these, I'm gonna add in a new check at the very front, and basically what we're gonna check is if enabled is we're gonna check this if it's false or and if it is false, then we're going to do return, and that's going to end the function. So if it is false, it's not going to do anything, and so all of this would never play. So we're going to put that there. Make sure it's at the front, because then it will be run first. And there we go. We'll just put that into every single one of these like this. I think that, well, not you, but you. There we go. And then down here also in our add input mapping, I'm going to make it so in here we're going to set is enabled. We're going to set that to true, and then inside of remove, I'm going to do set is enabled equals. I'm also going to just comment this out because I don't want to use that, because I don't want to remove the input mapping. I'm just going to use the same input mapping. I'm just going to swap between things. So pretty cool. Next, I want to make a dashing ability so you can dash or something, like when you press jump, or if you hold jump after a certain amount of time, you do a dash. If that makes, which I think you weren't able to do with an input trigger, or at least you could, but it's a little bit janky with timers and everything. But this should be a new way you can do it, which should work for everybody. So what we can do is, I'm gonna add an editable. This is gonna be for our movement modulator, and it's gonna be equal to a movement modulator to movement modulator. There we go. I'm adding a variable for our dash, and if it's ready or not. So is our dash ready? Is a logic, and make it false. And then I'm gonna do dash time, which is gonna be time for the dash, how long it takes. So to actually detect our dash and everything, I'm gonna use the final function, which is where is it? The on detection end, because we can basically get the player, also get the time. Actually, we have in time, so actually we don't actually need dash time. It's fine with dash ready. And then down here, what we're gonna do is, instead of here, we're gonna detect the in time, which is the time it took for the end. So we can do if in time, which is our float up there, if that's less than 3, so, or if that's greater than 3 seconds. Actually, I might make it maybe like 1.5 seconds. So you have to hold it for 1. We're gonna add in cool thing that happened where we'll get the agent of the in player, and then what we can do is we'll do a function that we're gonna make called act that, and we're going to use the agent. Now this function here, we're gonna actually make it down here. We're just gonna call it activate dash, and it's gonna take an agent, type agent, and it's going to be void equals, and we're gonna do our movement modulator dot activate agent. Now if you don't know a movement modulator device, you can make it so you can have like an impulse, so the player will get boosted forward, and maybe they might have like a little boost effect, like movement speed or something like that. So you can we'll use it to do that. Now another thing I want to do is, let's say if the thing isn't enabled, so if is enabled is equal false, I also want to add in another functionality, so we can do something like an item granting or something like that. So every single time you jump, so what we can do is, let's say for example, I do an editable. This is going to be our grantor, item granters. Not sure what to grant, maybe some gold. There we go. And so we have this grantor now. What we can do is we'll just go in again, maybe to the same function, which is the on detection and jump, and then inside of our unenabled, instead of just returning it, well, before that, what we can do is we'll do our grantor, and then we'll just grant item, and we'll grant it to the I'm actually going to need the agent, so we're going to just do this before as well, like that. We're also going to need an if, because again it's failable, so we'll just put that inside an if. So, and then we'll just do something like this. There we go, and that's work. I think that should be everything, and that should be the code done. So we'll just compile it, and if you look inside our verse device now, we're going to need a movement modulator and a grantor. So we're going to go into our conjure, we're going to find a movement modulator right here. Basically what we're going to do for this is we're going to maybe add a little movement speed bonus. We're going to make the effect duration about 1.5 seconds, 3 seconds. We can apply impulse, which is how we're going to do our dash, and we might add a little bit of forward impulse, maybe upwards. We'll do no, sure, visible during game. That's fine. No during phases always. It'll be pretty cool, pretty cool. And we'll just add that to our verse thing, and then we'll also make it like item grantor, like so. And then this item grantor could we'll add instead of like gold this, and like we'll drop it at the players, see it always, and it should drop when the thing is finished. There we go. So yeah, there we go. So going back into here, actually, what I could also do is, where's it go? Where's the item grantor grant item? I could also do, if I get the in time, do if time is this, so it'll need to still take a little bit of time, and that should work like that. So yeah, so maybe this might work. Well, let's find out. I'm just gonna compile it, and we'll just go into our thing now, and we'll see how this goes. We should see that if I try to jump that character, if I do go into here though, now we have all those, and if I jump, if I hold for 1.5 seconds, I can go, wow. I do a little dash. So if I hold it for longer than that, if I just jump normally, nothing happens because I need to hold it for at least 1.5 seconds. So I'm gonna go, wow. There we go. So you can see the timer on the top left. Once it hits 1.5, I can do it. Jump, hold it, 1.5, there we go. If I just spam it, doesn't work. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Now, like I said earlier, I added gold granting. So if I go into this trigger now, it's now been swapped to, I believe, the other one. So if I hold the button for 1.5 seconds, I should get some gold. So I'm holding the button right now. I held it for 1.4 seconds. There we go. If I just spam it, I won't get gold. So that's a cool little thing you can do actually. You can get gold like that. It's kind of fun. Alright, just before the video ends, this is me from the future, okay? While editing the video, I found a lot of things that just kind of didn't make any sense. I found a few issues, like, for example, this you don't even need, so you can just get rid of it. This also doesn't work with multiplayer, so if you want to actually do this with multiplayer, or like the is enabled specifically, this thing right here, that does not work with multiplayer, because that's a global variable, so it's going to change for everybody. So if one player goes into trigger, everybody will disable for everybody. If you don't want that to happen, the way we would fix that, we want to use something called maps. So to do this, I'm just gonna get rid of this, and I'm gonna type it out like this. It'll look like this instead. It'll be a var is enabled, and we then do a player logic, and then that's equal to a map. And basically, if you don't know what a map is, okay, it's basically like an array, but you need a key, okay? So for example, we'll use that key in the map to access a certain, like any data. So what you can do is you can have a logic inside of it. So for example, we could have a player name and a logic. So to actually open up the map and find data we need, we get the player's name, and then inside we can find the logic and mess around with it if we want. Going down to right here, all of these you can just change to player. Just put player inside of here and it'll work, and that's all you have to do. Just put player in front of is enabled, and it will sorry, these are in players. These are spelled slightly differently. This also won't work because again we're setting it to true, so we want to add the player thing there. This is also not going to work because it's this side, so you want to do it. You also actually need the player as well. We can just do that, and then that's what you want to do. And then we'll just copy it, paste it down here into the remove input mapping, and we'll just we'll set that to false. And that's literally how you make it work for multiplayer. That's all you have to do. You just have to change the variable to a map instead of that. So it will save a value per player, and you'll be able to access that value using the player's name. So that's all you have to do. So yeah, that's it. So there's a bunch of different ways you can actually utilize these to do some cool mechanics. This is the bare minimum. Okay, this is like really simple. Okay, you can tell how this would be if you really go in depth with this, and you can make your own custom input, but a lot more in depth, a lot more cooler than we can normally do with an input trigger base. Probably a lot more reliable as well. So hope you enjoyed the video, and there's gonna be more inputs coming in the future besides these, so keep that in mind. But this is the general baseline that you can do with this. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Comment a like, subscribe, use my code in the Fortnite shop. Thank you to all the members of the channel, and remember to watch all these videos for more of my tutorials. That's about it. I'll see you all around.